Thank you, the one person that can hear me. Virus will. Wow, I am completely amazed if it weren't for Facebook, knowing how many people will be here today. Thank you all for coming out. As you know, we have an amazing speaker today. He is the founder and publisher of this fantastic magazine called Skeptic Magazine. Is everyone aware of that? If you're not, now you know. Also, he writes for Scientific American and is the author of a plethora of books, but most importantly, Why Darwin Matters, the Case Against Intelligent Design. So without further ado, Dr. Shermer.
Thanks everybody for coming out. Can you hear me? Is that all right? I'll just project as loud as I can. It's not a real big room, it's a brewery. There's a beer vat back here. It's like a kegger for the night. We're going to have some fun. So, well, that's right. I'm the publisher of this Skeptic Magazine. We investigate claims of the paranormal, pseudoscience, fringe groups, and cults, and claims of all kinds between good science, junk science, bad science, voodoo science, pathological science, non-science, and plain old nonsense. And unless you've been on Mars, abducted by aliens, you, for the last few decades, you know there's a lot of it out there. Nonsense. That's what we deal with. Magazine's a quarterly publication. You can pick it up at any Barnes & Noble, Borders, regular bookstore, or you can go to skeptic.com and order it, or you can sign up for free tonight for the e-skeptic version. I'll pass this around. Just put your email address on there. Actually, I have a second clipboard that we'll pass around that direction. And I'll give you a pin to add to it. There we go. And so if we just have your email address, it's free. It's every week we post a free article, review, commentary, whatever, on matters skeptical, which include things like these. Each cover story has some kind of a particular theme to it. So we did one on artificial intelligence here. But for those of you in the back who can't see the pointer, it's right there. Anyway, so I carried this just for that joke. So my author, that is the question is, when will computers achieve human-level intelligence? And my author concluded that we are 5 years away and always will be. And that was 5 years ago. We did medical controversies like, do vaccinations cause autism? No. Why do people think it does? Because of anecdotal patternicity, that is connecting the dots, making patterns. You get your kid vaccinated, 2 months later he's diagnosed with autism, you think there's a connection. Maybe there is a connection. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. How can you tell the difference? The answer is science. That's what we do, teaching how scientists think about these sorts of things. But of course, that's not what happens in pop culture. In pop culture, you see things like on Larry King Live, National Autism Day last year, had on one side of the table a couple of medical researchers and experts on vaccination and autism. On the other side of the table, Jenny McCarthy and Jim Carrey, and videotapes of cute little autistic kids and a list of the vaccinations that they received. So you have the left brain, right brain, you have the sort of emotional brain, the rational brain, science, and anecdotal thinking. And that's the problem of how we get into trouble. Speaking of getting into trouble, this is the eponymous Charles Ponzi. And so we did a special issue after the Bernie Madoff affair. How could people fall for this? So the cover story there was done by a fellow named Stephen Greenspan. Has no relation to the maestro. He's a professor actually here in Colorado. And he's not here tonight by any chance, is he, Stephen? Are you here? Well, the interesting part about this is that he just wrote a book called The Annals of Gullibility. And he's an expert on gullibility and scams. And it turns out he lost half his life savings to Bernie Madoff. So I thought, oh, this would be a good story. And there's an expert who gets taken. Well, the interesting part about that is how would you know that it was a scam? What are the signs that you should have picked up on? I mean, who invested in Bernie actually even knew him or met him? Or any of his underlings there at the office. Hardly anybody, right? There's a sort of a chain of trust established through systems that pretty much work most of the time, but not all of the time. So the guy was once head of NASDAQ, for example, and he's been investigated several times by the SEC. So if they said he's okay, well then we sort of put that out there, and that's where we get lulled into trust where we shouldn't trust. We did one on 9/11 conspiracy theories. Was 9/11 a conspiracy? Well, yes, it was, as a matter of fact. By definition, 19 members of Al-Qaeda plotting to fly planes into buildings, that is a conspiracy, indeed. But that's not what the so-called 9/11 truthers think. They think it was an inside job by the U.S. government. Well, you know how we know it was not an inside job by the U.S. government? Because it worked. Right. So that's a whole other lecture. But basically, what we do is we provide the actual claims that they make, and then analyze it. What are the answers to them? It's not enough to just say they're a bunch of nut jobs or something like that. You actually have to provide explanations. We did one on global warming. I think it's okay to debate global climate change. It's all right. These are complex scientific models. I don't think they're fully accounting for things like clouds and whatnot. I think it's all right for scientists to debate these things. And the fact that it's so politically charged does make it questionable when you have extremists on both sides. So it is good to avoid that. I just put this slide together for our last two issues. You don't have to really worry about global climate change anyway, because the world's going to end in 2 years, 2012. Again. Rogue planet slamming into the earth there. And then this one just came out. I don't even have a copy. Just pulled up the webpage. Just hit the newsstands this week on the myths of psychology and the mind. You know, you only use 10% of your brain, that sort of thing. So you can get those at Barnes & Noble. Anyway, I want to concentrate tonight on a perennial topic for us, creation and evolution. Did a whole book on this. The only book I have written with a cover with full frontal nudity on the cover. Shows that as puritanical as Americans are, if it's a different species, it's all right. So we do got to give a little shout out to happy birthday to Charles Darwin. This is Darwin Week, February 12th of his birthday, and so there's celebrations all week around the world. And last year was the 200th anniversary of his birth, 150th anniversary of the publication of The Origin of Species, and so this year is the exciting 201st and 151st. That's probably some word for that. So this is where he was born. This is the house, and he was born in his house, as so many people were back then, in 1809. It was called the Mount. His father was a medical doctor and physician there in Shrewsbury. And this is his, the house is now just like a county seat where they keep records, something like that. And so he grew up there, and let's see if I don't have a lockdown on my computer. These are big files here. There we go. That's the house bedroom he was born in. This is his grammar school where he went to school. The statue wasn't there when he went there. He got his religious education in the Unitarian Church of Shrewsbury. It's a fairly liberal religious institution, so that tells us something about him. But he's most famous for is his voyage around the world on the HMS Beagle, where the first great myth that we'll bust tonight is the fact that he did not learn or discover evolution or natural selection during the voyage of the Beagle. There's the voyage was primarily a mapping voyage for the Royal Navy, just to track all the detailed maps, particularly of South America, both east and west coast. So he spent a lot of time off the ship, where he was seasick most of the time anyway. And so, but it's when he got to the Galapagos Islands where we know exactly where he was the whole 5 years, because they kept detailed ship's logs. So the island that they first landed in, September 18th, 1835, so just keep this in mind, 1831 to 1836 is the voyage. He then gets home and never leaves home again. But so they landed right here at this little beach right here next to this volcano. And then hiked up into the highlands there, an island that was then called Chatham when he went there, and now it's called San Cristobal. The islands are run by Ecuador, so they changed the names as countries are wont to do. And so to get there, you just fly into this little town, Puerto Moreno, or you go into the other island. There's just two ways to get there. And so we spent the night on the beach where Darwin spent the night. It's one of those things where you sleep in George Washington's bed. Well, I've never done that. But anyway, so that's that volcano. Keep that in mind. Cerro Brujo, it's called. This is the leader of our expedition. Frank Sulloway is a Darwin scholar, and he wanted to retrace Darwin's footsteps